What's going on, good people of the internet? It is time once again for Comics Unmasked, the podcast where a bunch of folks shoot the breeze and talk about comic books and such. We are back for something that has been in the works for years, 8 or 9 years to be exact. I had the pleasure of sitting down those number of years ago for my first ever interview with a writer for Falcon #1, and that was written by Rodney Barnes, who has gone on to do some of the greatest comic books in the history of the medium, from Philadelphia to Crownsville. He has written some of the greatest horror comics ever to be put out, and has done so by actually expressing some of the fears and the history of Black culture in the best of ways. And now he has gone on to do so many great things. He did great things even before that, working on shows like The Boondocks and My Wife and Kids, and he tells his story throughout this interview, and it means so much to me, finally getting to sit down with him after all these years. I really hope that you enjoyed this interview because it meant so much to me, and it was an honor, and I can't wait for you to check it out. So I wanted to start off with this because I've had this for 10 years since you gave it to me, and it has meant the world to me. So thank you for this, because I will tell you, I just actually bought Nick Spencer's omnibuses of the Cap run before your run, and it breaks my heart that this run is not in a hardcover of some kind. So we'll talk about it, but I very much wanted you to know that this means the world to me because you gave me my first interview as a journalist. So thank you.
Of course, man. Of course.
So that sits right here on my desk all the time. Comic capsules is a great thing because you can't really CGC a personalization. So it was
Right.
I need something to keep that safe, and that means a lot to me still.
You'll have to come to a con so we can get a CGC.
Ooh, okay. I'm down for that because I got Crownsville issues for you to sign because we're gonna talk about that too.
Happy to sign them. Free of
Most
charge.
definitely. I'm here for it. So everybody gets the same first question. What is your issue 0? What was the first issue that made you want to be a comic fan for life?
It's been a long time, so I don't know exactly what was the first. I can tell you what area the first was around. I was a huge Neil Adams fan. And my mother used to date this guy who became my stepfather. That's another story. And he had a stack of Batman, Sergeant Rock, Detective Comics, and it seemed like Neil Adams drew every cover and some interior art. And I loved it. It just caught my eye, and I fell in love with it. And I learned that they were different because when I went to the corner store, because back then they had spinner racks, and I used all my lunch money, everything, just buying comics, and I found out that they were all different. But I was thrown into the comics culture and have been a part of it for as long as I can remember. There were like 3 or 4 guys in my neighborhood, and we traded comics and argued. Could Hulk beat Thor and Superman and blah 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 and those things? And I'm an only child, so it sort of gave color to life. It sort of gave me something to rest my mind in. There was a ethical through line, good guys versus bad guys, and comics were simple back then. And as they evolved with the Alan Moore stuff and Frank Miller stuff and whatever, as I got older, it grew with me and kept my interest the entire way. And there have been periods where, life got in the way and I dropped in and dropped out. But like a junkie, every Wednesday I go to the comic store, buy a bunch of books and don't read them.
It's a curse, isn't it?
It is. I gotta go, and now I'm going to the Comics Den. Shout out to Joe Jam over in Inglewood, because a few others have closed, but I'll find a spot, and Wednesday you'll find me at a comic shop.
I love that. Yeah, because it seems as if the good old days of the 80s and 90s, the boom really took a lot of things out of us, like the bubble bursting. I remember
Yeah,
you could find shops in every city. It felt like.
yeah, yeah. And I remember when Steve Jeppy had a store in the Inner Harbor in Baltimore, Jeppy's Comic World. That was the first comic shop I ever went to from Spinner Racks. One day they just disappeared, and then there was a comic shop. And it's when it became I guess it always was a business. I had this conversation with Pat and Oswalt one time. We were talking about how comics used to be disposable entertainment. Nobody was thinking
Yeah.
about saving them and keeping them and collecting them in movies and TV shows. They were just something
Mhm.
that was like a dime, 15 cents, a quarter, something not to be taken seriously. And I always took them seriously, but then all of a sudden it became more like a business. You had to go to a place to get them. And when you had to go to a place to get them, they became something that used to be part of like pop culture, something that was everywhere, to now you had to seek it out. And then when you had to seek it out, it became more and more and more refined into a thing where the common folks, like I work with kids, and when I take them comic books, like to the boys and girls clubs or schools, they don't know what they are. Like they don't have the same relationship with comics that I had. Um, and there was a different thing when you had to work for it. I used to love the Legion of Superheroes, Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. And
Mhm.
you had to make sure you knew when the new issues were coming because they would, get rid of the old ones and they got new ones there. And if you didn't get 215, 216 would be there and you had to figure out how you were going to go about getting that one that you missed. So, the whole aspect of it for me growing up was fun.
There you go. But say like, yeah, because like it's interesting now because with the advent of social media and now with publications having solicitations right in your hand, it's easier to keep a track of things. Like you just talked about the Legion.
Yeah.
We know now that we're getting a brand new Legion book 6 months in advance, and it's like
Mhm.
that's like crazy to think that when we were kids, like it was so much different.
I would have to go to a con. That was the big thing about going to cons was filling in issues that I didn't have. And there were
Hmm.
creation cons at the time. It wasn't like the big like San Diego. The Javits Center was a big deal, New York Comic Con. But the local
Hmm.
ones, I grew up in Maryland, so around them were always small, but there was just something about all of it that was exciting. And there was an idealism to it because it was simple. It wasn't just based on what something was worth or getting a number one and never reading it because one day or a variant covered by such and so, which is all great. But there was just a simplicity to it that still had a romanticized ideal to me.
Okay. Okay. So like what got you to a point where you saw yourself like taking your talents of screenwriting to then going into a comic book? Like how did that door open? Because a lot of people don't
It-
seem to really know about that. Like
yeah,
what was the thing that opened the door for you to be able to write about the stories that you had grew up with?
I was. I had tried a couple of times. It was quirky because I didn't actually know the direct path of how you become a comic book writer. I still don't know. People email me now. Like, I don't think I've ever solicited for a gig. Um, I just, they came. But I worked on a show, Marvel's Runaways, for,
Hmm.
I think we were on Hulu at the time.
Right.
And we were renegotiating my contract for the second season. And I remember asking if anybody at Marvel Television knew anybody at Marvel Publishing, and they could make it known that I'd like to write a comic book. I would like to write a comic book. And they gave me Falcon, which was my first book. And, I had to, the first three issues of Falcon, I don't look at as like my favorite writing because I had to figure out the relationship between writing. I was writing for TV. I wasn't writing
Hmm.
for comics. I wasn't writing for art. I was just telling a story.
Hmm.
And I always look at Falcon issue 4 as my first comic because I was starting to get my legs under me. And if you look at Falcon 4 and you look at some of the stuff that I do today, you'll see closer to the writer I am today.
Hmm. It's interesting because like you could like it felt like those early issues you had the entirety of the Marvel universe thrown at your head because you had like
Mhm.
the Living Tribunal, you deal with the fact that Galactus had just got turned into the Life Giver, like you had so much being thrown at you, and then you had to like try to make a status quo for Sam post losing the shield. What
Mhm.
was that conversation like? Because that was such a heated time for Marvel. Like I remember they had a whole idea for Secret Empire where they wanted comic shops to salute Hail Hydra to advertise politicized the event and it like alienated a lot of the populace. So it created more baggage for Sam on top of the issue of Steve being a Nazi. So like, what was that talk like of having that like separation, that like that whole breaking of the shield on the cover and trying to establish a new status quo for him?
It was overwhelming for me because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And it's a difference between reading comics and writing comics. That might seem obvious, but
Mm,
for me, I'm thinking it's all just storytelling because I sort of
yeah.
approach everything else that way. But again, having a flat panel of art to work with, you sort of have to, there are mechanics involved.
Mm,
I've learned to say more with less,
that's
brevity.
fair.
And I remember my editor the first time I turned my script in, he's like, "This is ponderous." He's like, "I think I like it." And I'm thinking, I know what the word ponderous means. That's not something I want to hear. And I had to learn, just to get all of that information that you just mentioned in and do it in a way that is satisfying. And another thing too, because I'm older, I am accustomed to more wordy comics. Like if you read an
Mm,
Alan Moore Swamp Thing, that's a day's worth of reading. It's
yeah.
satisfying reading, but it's way different than what you see today to where
Mm,
the stuff you see in modern comics. So there were so many adjustments that I had to make,
mm,
and I couldn't allow arrogance or hubris to sort of take hold. And because I write TV, I'm going to do it my way. I
yeah.
had to figure out a new way, and I had to figure out a way to get all of that stuff in, and then figure out what my voice in comics would be.
That's fair. I must say, like, it was very interesting because I remember kind of being internally frustrated, not with you, but with the situation because of Sam having to lose the shield. So it was, but at the same time, it was weird because you were given a whole new sidekick for him with Rayshawn, and it was just like, we already had a Patriot. Why do we need another
Yep.
one? And it was like
Yep.
very odd. And then Joaquin's nowhere to be found. And it was just it like not to say it was bad, but it was also just like you had all this thrusted upon you, but you still cooked with it. You actually made something of it that I still think your first three issues are solid. I think for
Oh,
a
thank you.
starting point, they are very good. It was like I think you were hitting as many of the greatest hits as you could because you were like Brother Voodoo and Blade, and you're hitting them notes
That was
and
when
it's
I knew
like,
the book was going to get canceled. It's like
mm,
there was a point where I think it had dropped under like 10,000 issues or whatever. And
uh,
I always wanted to do a different type of thing. I
okay,
wanted to bring in Blade and Brother Voodoo, and I wanted Sam Went to Hell and to figure out who he was. And I didn't want to just do Sam the Soldier. I wanted to
right,
do a different type of thing. And especially since he's not Captain America anymore, like how can we take him on a journey that's going to reset the table for him to
mm,
be a different man um, in a lot of different ways, like an identity, like not necessarily going through an identity crisis. Um, but yeah, the Patriot made it difficult because now I got this other character and I got Blackheart, who I really don't know a whole lot about, and I got to
mm.
do all these other things. But but it was cool and it was fun and it was challenging and it opened my eyes to a lot of different things. I'm very, very grateful for.
It's wild too because like I used to joke to people and I still say it to this day that like if you ever get a chance to do a Blade book, I'm there with bells on. Like
I love to.
it makes me mad because like you writing Blade would open so many doors for Black fans. I feel like.
I would certainly, since my first job in Hollywood was on the movie Blade.
Wait, what? Oh, I haven't read that anywhere. Wait, we need to unpack this. Wait, hold
Mhm.
on. Wait, how did that happen?
I was I was promised a gig when I got out here, and that fell through. So I ended up living in my
Okay.
car,
Oh wow.
and I had known a production assistant, a key production assistant, and I asked her if she knew of any jobs, because I needed a gig because I was living in my car. And
Mm.
she said, "Yeah, I'm about to start this movie in a couple of weeks called Blade with Wesley Snipes." And I was like, "I know who
Oh.
Blade is. I didn't know Wesley Snipes was going to play him." She said, "Why don't you apply, put your name in the hat?" And I got the job. And that was my first gig. I was there from beginning to end, and Steve Norrington was cool, and Wesley was
Wow.
cool. And I was downtown. I had some horrible days trying to negotiate with homeless people. under the bridge
Oh,
when we were trying to shoot those scenes because they would send me out there because I'm big, and you go
yeah.
talk to them. And but I had to adjust because I'm from Maryland, and in the days, California, LA was really, really hot. So I would dress
Yeah.
for it being really hot, but at night it would be cold, and I'm still dressed for the day. So I had to learn again. It was another learning phase where I got thrown in, but it was a fantastic experience. Everybody was great. I was in the blood club. I was at the door,
Mhm.
stopping extras from running out because some of them didn't know the blood was going to come down on them.
Oh,
Um, it was a great experience. It was a great experience.
okay. Excellent. So one thing that like I haven't heard like you talk about a lot is your experience working on the Boondocks, because it is one of those things that is still talked about to this day in the culture. Like we still like, if it weren't for John Witherspoon passing, people would still want the Boondocks to come back. And it's
Hmm.
like do you ever
Oh,
see
that didn't stop them. They still want it back. Every
well
time I
like
go
they
to a
still
con, yeah, they
uh,
could care less. But yeah,
it's crazy because like I even said like just bring JD in. Like JD even auditioned and they were like, we might
sounds
AI
just
your
like his
dad, and
phone.
I'm like that sounds kind of terrifying. Let's not do that.
Yes. No, I enjoyed it. I mean, it was at a weird time because I was doing two shows at a time. I was working on My Wife and Kids by day and The Boondocks by night, and I did that all the way through Everybody Hates Chris. So for like a decade, um, that was what I was doing. I mean, it was fun because by day, when you're working on network television, you can't say anything. You're trying to find clever
Mm,
ways how to say something, and then at night, I can say you can say anything you want. It's almost like
right.
therapy. You can let off steam. Um, it was fun as long as it was fun. You know, by the time we got to the end of season three, it got tight, and then everybody knows what
Mm,
season four isn't. I got blamed for a lot of season four, even though I had nothing to do with it.
right.
And I'll take
Season
it
4 is
because
complicated, it seems like.
oh, it's even more than complicated. There was nobody there. There was no. It just wasn't. It was a lot of different things I can't talk about at the moment, but I can say
Okay.
that it's sort of like a band breaking up. You know, it's like
Mm,
none of the original players are there, and it just doesn't sound like that band. It doesn't feel like that band. And like with anything like that, you remove vital pieces and you no longer have the thing that you loved.
that's very
And
true.
some people wanted Winning Time to keep going. Some people wanted Wu Tang to keep going.
Right.
You know, you get used to things ending and sort of you look at it like you just keep moving on. It's like you're in a circus and you just move to another city.
Right. And see, it seems like in all the some things that I've read about your work is that you try to do as much as you can while you're there. You try to make as much of an impact as you can while you have that opportunity. Like, is that the philosophy that you roll with, where it's like you're gonna try to like even in the times where you're restricted in what you can say, like you do your best of what you can with it, not just treating it as like a job. You try to at least make something of it while you're there.
I'm always amazed that I get to do this for a living because I'm a big guy. And when I say big guy, 6'7", 306 right now. I'm proud of myself.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and it's I always thought I would be like the guy that tears your ticket when you go into the gate. You know, I would be the
Mm,
guy that's picking up a box or moving something. I learned pretty quick I wasn't going to be tossing a ball or tackling anybody. Life taught me that. But I never always wanted to be able to work with my mind. And I care about the culture. I care about humanity as a whole. So when you get an opportunity to say something, when you get into a place and you've lived a little bit of a life, um, you try to interject some truth because I remember growing up and how much television was like everything to me. And I know it's not the
mm,
same for kids now because you have so many different things. You have cell phones, you have all kinds of stuff. But
mhm.
to me, I believe good times. I believe what's happening. I believe the
Right.
stuff that I saw. If you were on TV talking, I thought it was real. And so when you get an opportunity to affect culture, and even in the smallest of ways, you want to try to do it in a way that feels honest. It feels like it's moving the needle in a positive direction that sometimes the world doesn't feel like it's moving in.
That's beautiful. I love that because, like, yeah, it seems as if that the world is in a messed up place these days. So you kind of miss the days where you had the good times and things like that.
Had that conversation the other day. The simplicity, sometimes, just the simplicity of what life used to be was, I miss it.
But at the same time, I would argue that like the it was even harder for them to make shows like that because of the challenges that know that exist in the industry.
All of them.
Yeah.
I'm not just talking about TV. I'm talking about more from a place of life. But in regards to television, yes, because of the work of a lot of great folks. If Ryan Coogler didn't do what Ryan Coogler's done, or Jordan Peele hasn't done what Jordan Peele's done, et cetera, et cetera. When I have a genre piece, I can walk into virtually any studio right now and they'll listen to me. And I remember when I first landed in LA in the 90s, and I would take my stuff to studios, they didn't want to hear that. Nobody want to see black vampires. Nobody want to see this stuff.
Mm,
And so a lot of those stories became, comic books because I wanted them to live.
mm.
And, look at Philadelphia. I pitched Philadelphia as a movie in 97, 98,
What?
and to Harvey Weinstein. And almost got it there, he says, but then he changed his mind. But
Oh.
yeah, it's when you start to look at where it's come and where it is, yes, on that front, I think there are opportunities. And I think also when you look at, there used to be an idea that blackness was just one thing.
Mm,
And now you have different, as it always was, you have different subsets. Like everybody, you've got points of view from gender identity, from economic status, from whatever. You've got a lot of different ideas, and there always were that. And
mm,
before, you didn't see that. So, in that regard, I think being able to show a fully realized idea of who we are as a culture is fantastic. Um, what I'm speaking to was more of outside of that, the way
right.
people are to each other, that type of
Mm,
thing, the acrimony, the discourse, that type of thing is more of where I am, where my head
gotcha.
is sometimes.
I get what you're saying, yeah, for sure. Because like that the escapism can be a very enjoyable thing when like you feel as if you can find that moment in the good
Hmm.
times and things like that. But at the same time, it's like once you start to peel the onion, like I feel like the VH1 behind the music type
Hmm.
content, the documentaries started like kind of ruined a lot of like children's childhood when it comes to certain things because when you
Yes.
find out the real story, you're just like,
And,
ah.
and I'm friends with some of those people. So when they tell me the part that you can't hear, I go, all right, maybe I shouldn't take this person to dinner. But
It's insane. But like, it breaks my heart that you tell me that like Philadelphia almost happened because I love handing people like I gave away a hardcover of Volume 1 last
wow.
month to somebody because like I wanted them to read it so badly and I gave it to them. I was like, if you don't hear your own daddy in that last page of issue 1, you're not black enough. And then they called me that night and was like, you're right. And because like you did something with that moment where he's like, what took you so long, boy? And it resonates with
Yes.
them so well. And I love that
Yes.
you did that.
Well, thank you. That's what my father would have said to me, is what I say to my son and daughters, like I said, who just called me and interrupted us. Um, yeah, I mean, I love the idea of cultural specificity. I think I look at culture sometimes more than race because, race sometimes is an idea of what people
Right.
think. And culture is just sometimes how we say what we say, how we do what we do, how we move. But again, that isn't just relegated to one idea. But when I'm speaking to how it affects me personally, I'm speaking of how I do culture and how it speaks to me. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's insane because like you had like I jokingly referred to you in my interview with David F. Walker as like the godfather of horror when it comes to like black horror
Mm,
because
yeah.
you have this knack when it comes to like comic books where you know how to like tell an artist how to make that panel layout sync. Like even in the first issue of Philadelphia where all the vampires go after him or like with Crownsville with them children. It's just you have this ability to just know how to sink into someone's soul and like use black history and weaponize it for the culture in the best way where it isn't like it is very much similar to the true stories like you brought up Jordan Peele, you brought up Ryan Coogler. It feels very much like if you could have had the reins to do what you wanted to do this entire time, you could have been doing those like full-on stories and whatnot and bringing
It's not
those to life.
over.
Oh,
It's
you
not
know, it's
over. I'm
never.
still
Nah,
in the
yeah,
game. I'm still in
for
the game. I'm
sure.
still trying to do those things. But yeah,
Hey, like I would kill for a Crownsville TV show. Like
it's
them kids
well,
would cause some nightmares.
they're adaptation conversations now. Everything has been adapted. We'll see which one takes off the tarmac and actually gets done. But all of them have been options so far.
Ooh, so like Blackula is coming like the reboot, right?
Well, Blackula is under somebody else. That's already existed. That doesn't belong to me. I'm saying more of the
Okay.
Philadelphias and the Nita Hawes and the Monarchs and the Crownsvilles and
Mm,
those. They all have like homes, but whether or not they'll see the light of day really comes to my ability to sell
got you. Okay.
in
Like,
time. Because if people don't know, like we know what they are, but studios don't know what they are, but they do
right.
know what a Blackula is and what another thing. So it's easier when someone already knows what it is than it is
Mhm.
to go from 0 to 10.
Yeah, for sure. Because like you're definitely like I when I first looked up like where Crownsville was and the story behind it after issue 1 dropped, I was in shock. I was like, how it's like the Tuskegee experiments, all these different things, like or even the like Tulsa massacre, the things that are hidden about our culture that you just find so easily and you make something about it. Like you weaponize it in the best way, but because it feels authentic. You're not trying to like use it in a wrong way. You use it
Yeah.
for us, and I love that about that. Like, what made you want to go into Crownsville specifically?
Um. Well, my grandmother worked there, and I had certain family members that had been institutionalized there. And probably about there's a book called Madness by Antonia Hilton, who's a friend. She actually mentions me in the book.
Oh wow.
And one day I went up to the hospital. It's condemned now. It's been closed for a long time.
Mhm.
And I went up just to get a feel for it because I wanted to tell a ghost story. I've been in vampires for so much that I wanted to tell a solid ghost story. And I went up there just to get a feel for it, and the security officer came over and tried to shoo me away. He threatened to
Oh.
call the police and all of that. And I told her why I was there. And while I was there, she Googled me. And she
Mhm.
found out that I'm a writer and whatever. I wasn't just trying to come up there and, you know. And so she started telling me ghost stories. And then other security guards came and they started telling me their ghost stories. And we sat there for literally from going to being kicked out to 3 hours later. I'm still sitting there listening to ghost stories. And that building they scream in, and that building they run from that building to the other building, and you see faces up against the window. Okay. And, at this point, my mind's going like, okay, I can
Mhm.
do this, I can do that. Like they're telling me the story, but I'm also hearing my own music at the time. And there are over 1,700 unmarked graves on the property. And so that was another thought too. Like, it's one thing to be tortured in life. It's another thing to be unceremoniously just dispatched with,
Mhm.
just buried. Like your families don't know, you don't get a proper burial, you don't get any respect or dignity. And it also
Mhm.
speaks to what's under the process of how Crownsville conducted itself. It did its business. And so I wanted to give voice to those people without exploiting it. The thing that you spoke to is like, how do you tell a ghost story that's scary and has elements of, in quotes, fun, genre, that type of stuff,
Mhm.
while not exploiting at the same time? And a lot of times when I see some things from us, um, the mixture of history and horror, you got to get the mixture right. You got to figure out a way. I think Sinners does a great job at it. There are others, of course. Blackula, I love Blackula for its time, but you got to be able to get that right, and it really comes from instinct. When you're sitting there writing, you're saying, "How does this feel?" If I was this person's grandmother, if I was the person who went through this, and then just how does it feel as a member of our culture to say, how I'm going to disseminate this information in this story. And there are moments where you need to say something, but you would say it as if you and I were talking to each other, not so much like message. It comes through the humanity. And I wanted a homicide detective. I wanted somebody who was used to dealing with death, someone who sort of not laughed at death, but developed a certain type of sense of humor to these horrific things that they have to see every day.
Mhm.
And I felt like that type of person would be able to you would understand through his lens atrocity, but even atrocity that at times is too much for him to bear.
Right.
Um, and so that was kind of the math, the simple math to it.
Like it makes perfect sense, and it's like it goes to what you're saying of that authenticity, the idea of getting the mixture right. And I think what made it so perfect, the way you nailed the mixture, is in the final issues where
Hmm.
the white people come in and just white people it, and you just go, I'm mad, but I know why he did it, because that's
Right.
real. And it's just, it sits with you like, dang it. Like they could have ran through the whole town. They could have ran through
Yes.
everybody, but they white
Yes.
people it in the perfect way. And I love that you
Right.
did it.
And that's a lot of times how it works. I think that you think about, I'm a child of the 70s, and I think about a lot of the movement, the move that was in 80, but a lot of things that happened in the Pan African movement and the Panthers, and just how a lot of times our rights were just trampled on. People were just trampled over. And even though they were positioned to exact their anger and their frustration, um, the system would somehow neuter from within. You think about the Panthers. If you read COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence pages from J. Edgar Hoover, you see how they infiltrated the Panthers, and a lot of groups like the Panthers, and did away with Fred Hampton and Martin, Malcolm, Medgar, all of these different iconic figures, and just disrupted everything, the nation, all of these people, and and I'm not saying it for. I'm sure there are people who have criticisms about those groups and all of that, the things that they were doing. But as a culture, it seems like we've never had an opportunity to just grow and prosper. There's always a backlash. Like when you talk about Tulsa, or you talk about Reconstruction, or we could go down to redlining or mass incarceration. Like every generation, there seems to be something that hits the culture hard. And so sometimes when you see behavior, that behavior comes from the offshoot of things that have been done to kind of create that dynamic. And anytime I get the opportunity to speak to history, with Philadelphia, someone was asking me the other day, I did an interview about Philadelphia, and I was just saying how the historical figures, everything up to when they become vampires is true. And then, George Washington with the slave teeth and the different things. And then once he becomes a vampire, that part is fantasy, but it's still influenced by the part that's real. And I try to use history. I learned so much about history from comic books and movies and different things, like not necessarily just from school. Um, and I wanted to make my books sort of speak to that too, to where I'm telling stories about history, but they don't feel like medicine. They still feel like entertainment, but you can take that entertainment away. And if you happen to be in school and you see that there's a moment that was speaking to the period that I'm talking about, oh yeah, I know what that is because I read such and such a thing. And so I would have killed for that as a kid.
Yeah, like it reminds me of like Assassin's Creed in a way where like they bend around the historical accuracy. They bend
Hmm.
around it to navigate their own story. And even in the early issues of Philadelphia, and then as you progress, like you said, with like George Washington, you're taking the truth and then bending around it. That way you can craft the narrative in the perfect way. Like you kind of do the same thing in Crownsville, where like you even like harp on the idea of like the van and pulling up and the kids like being like having to trust the white man. Like
Hmm.
you don't want to do wrong by him, right? You want to like be told the right thing. So they get in the van because they think they're doing the right thing. Like it all kind
Yes.
of blends backwards and everything you've done when it's like there's a bending around the historicalness because you want to tell that narrative.
Yes. Very well
It's
said.
yeah, it's beautiful. I love the way you do it, and it's like
Thank you.
it makes me mad because I've been listening to Run Fool like
Mm.
nonstop ever since I found it, and I'm just like, this man could just be like the horror James Patterson, just like send people out to make comic books out of Run Fool, and it's like, why hasn't that been a conversation? Like the Rougarou could be an easy miniseries like on its own, just like throw it out there. Like has that been a conversation?
We are trying to make it a TV show. It's
Okay.
not exactly like Run Fool because people aren't buying anthology series right now, but we have been working on getting that set up too. And I've got two new podcasts coming, hopefully this year. One that's just like Run Fool is called Oh Hell No. So it's in the vein of Run Fool, where it's scripted stories by the same team that all of us who
Okay.
put together What You Read, and then one on UFOs from
Mhm.
our perspective. How it affects religion and our point of view on these things. Um, yeah, I mean, all of the stuff that you're talking about, I try to get other media set up with TV and film. It's just easier said than done. And then while I'm doing that, I still have to do the thing that keeps the lights on. So
Mhm.
there's a constant work, like literally before I got on here with you, I had two outlines that I got to get in by the end of the day, and then I got three scripts that I have to get in by the 4th of July, and then one pitch that I have to have ready for right after the 4th of July. So it's a constant grind. I owe some more Star Wars stuff. It's a constant thing. And again, I'm grateful. It's no complaint, but I wish I could make all of it work because a lot of times what these things take is time. Like you literally have to take all of the no's. And when somebody says no, they don't immediately say no. It might take them 3 months to say no. And then you've lost
Mhm.
3 months. And then you got to start that process over again and again and again. And it's complicated.
That makes perfect sense. Like it definitely seems like a tricky battle when it's like they're interested in the idea, but then like is there money in it? Is there interest in it? Like it's a
All
whole
of that.
battle in
I
its
made
own.
no money on Run Fool. I didn't get paid a dime. I didn't get paid a
That
dime.
blows my mind. Like I would say,
And
I still think that like if y'all would have crowdfunded, y'all could still keep doing Run For It. It
well,
bothers
we
me.
had 700,000 listeners, like for
Mm,
per episode, which isn't a horrible television show audience, but
right.
it was three different producers on there. So for all of the, if it had been one or two, it would have made sense. But oh hell no, we'll be Run Fool 2.0. So yeah,
Okay, that's good to hear. Because, like, yeah, I remember I was driving to Motor City Con last month, and I was listening to the the festival with the little green people, and
yeah,
just the way you like talk about these creatures, it gets inside your head, and it's the same way you write your comics, and it's just like. Just create literally it could just be Run Fool the anthology comic. Like you literally could just have every 6 issues is another like episode of the show, and
I
it would
pitched
be
that.
like phenomenal.
I've got an anthology series that we just pitched to a publisher. Probably wouldn't want me to say their name, but three stories. I've got the three stories. They're three great stories. I'm gonna write all three, and we'll see what happens. But it's a great time for being able to do things. It's just a hard time to be able to do everything.
That's valid, yeah, and it's like it's insane because you have now been nominated for the Eisner for Crownsville, which is
Yep.
phenomenal.
Yep.
And what is that like to have a historical like significant story like that to be considered valuable? Because I got a quote from Regine, who is one of the judges this year, and there was the effort to actually make sure that black stories were considered. That like there was
Right.
the effort to make sure that it isn't just the unconscious bias affecting them as like it has
Mhm.
been done multiple times. What is that feeling like to actually have a story like that like actually considered?
I'm very grateful. I mean, this is my third Eisner nomination, and Blackula was also nominated. Jason was nominated for Blackula, but it's a great feeling. Um, Sometimes there's a feeling when you get there that the nomination is the award itself
Mm,
because a lot of times the thing that you're up against is a machine. And
yeah.
so I remember when Philadelphia was nominated, we were up against like Superman, blah, 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 and Batman, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you're going to lose. And yes, David Walker reminds me there's hope because of Bitterroot. And
Yeah.
is always there. But I always go with a nod of I'm glad somebody's reading this thing, that it's not just going out into the void. Because when you're sitting in a room writing a comic book, and we were talking before about distribution, you don't know whose hands, if anybody's, it's going to
Mm,
get into. You're writing, sometimes you think just for the sake of doing the thing. And when you write something that's close to your heart, it's not just another story. It's something that I grew up with and something that I know. And a lot of the characters in there are composites of a lot of people that I know and a place that I know that, it rings a little closer. It's a little bit more intimate than the
Mhm.
average story. So it's great that it's nominated. It's great that it's there. We'll see.
Okay, well, so yeah, like at the very least, you get to put that nice silver symbol on the trait for
Yes, yes, on
Crownsville.
the
Like,
trade. Let's see if Oni Press and hey Hunter, put it on there. Put it on.
and like, hey, if it gets the gold seal, that'd be really awesome too. But like, at the
That'd
very
be
least,
great
that
too.
silver is gonna be really
But I
nice.
tried. My therapist has always got me in a place. I try not to let my highs get too high, my lows get too low.
That's valid.
Nomination's great. We'll see what happens. Because if I start, I'm sensitive. So if I start wanting it and it doesn't happen, oh my God, I'm gonna do one of those. Do like Orlando did with American Gods. I'm gonna let them know. You
I love
know,
that.
I'm gonna let them go. I can't do that. I'm too old for that. But yeah.
Hey, like, but sometimes like being that like voice that will speak out for your community can be like very honest. Like, I like even yesterday I released an article where I talked about the unconscious bias in comic journalism, and it's like there's so many like people like yourself who have gone unconsidered or unspoken of for so long when it comes to the work that you've done. So like
You're young
it.
enough. You're young enough to take the fight. You got that. You got that disposition. You're good with that. Me, I'd be fighting all day. I wouldn't get nothing done because I feel the fight because I care about the fight.
Mm.
So I'm sitting in it. So while I got to write for 14, today will be a 14-hour writing day.
Oh wow.
And as soon as I feel something, I take that in the room with me when I'm writing. I got to purge that thing out in order to get back to the thing that I'm doing. And if I'm fighting all day, a lot of my contemporaries that I see on Facebook fighting all the time. And God bless them, because I can't do it. I can't do it. I do it in the work. I let Crownsville speak for me. I let Philadelphia speak for me. I let Nita Hall speak for me. They do that thing, and then you can get mad at them. So,
I respect that because like you fight on the battleground that you can, and it's like sometimes like for me it's the mic and the keyboard, but for like you it's
yes.
the keyboard on a different like level. You
And you've
do it.
got the voice for it, too.
I
You got
appreciate
the
it
right
though.
voice. You got the pipes for it. You got the voice to be able. When I hear your voice, I'm like, yeah, that's that. I got to pay attention to that voice.
See, it's crazy too because like it like you kept me going, and it's like it's crazy that both of us got our start around the same time in comics because like the fact that like Marvel let me talk to you blew my mind. And then one thing that I wanted to like talk to you about was Luke Cage because you got that little shot to swing with them for Gang War, and it's like it's tortured me for so long why they would let this man be mayor of New York City but not give him an ongoing. And it's
Well,
like you could have done so much with that.
I give you a little bit more with Gang War that pissed me off.
Ooh, okay.
That so you see, you got a little bit of ire out of me. What that was supposed to be, the robots in that were supposed to be Sentinels, and he was
Oh.
supposed to be fighting with the X-Men.
Oh.
That's what that book was. And right when it became time to do it, they took away the X-Men and they took away the Sentinels and they took away like all of the stuff. And because they were doing other books, it wasn't because it was me. It wasn't anything
Right.
political. It was just those characters were assigned to someplace else. But in my mind, if you're going to take rights away, like because that's what was going on in New York at the time, and that's what was
Mm.
starting the gang war, was, the X-Men would be perfect for that. And you would
Mhm.
put Luke in there with them, and then it's not so much just that he's mayor. It's that he's in the midst of a thing with the X-Men of changing culture, and we can talk about history and all the other stuff that I like, and I end up with
Mhm.
Luke fighting robots. And it's like the thing that I wanted to do that was at the heart that I wanted at where I wanted sort of got neutered because of circumstances. And
Mhm.
I still think, man, if they only knew what I had up my sleeve, and it was going to be because I don't get a lot of Marvel superhero work. I get
Mhm.
more Star Wars work, and every once in a while they give me a miniseries, and I'm appreciative of that.
Right.
But in order to get to that place where you do have the bigger stories, you have to sort of knock it out of the park, and it's hard to do that if you don't have all the toys in the toy box.
That's very fair. And it's like I've been saying for the longest time, like you with Sam with the shield would be the ultimate returning, or like you on Blade would be iconic, especially now that you've done Philadelphia, you on Blade. Like
Well,
I'd
Blade would
pay
be
the whole
different.
the whole house for that.
Blade would be a different thing. I mean, the places I would take him just through the Marvel universe, and a lot of great writers have worked on Blade. A lot of great writers have done some really great stuff with Blade. So I'm not saying I would be special or stand out amongst them. It's just that I think there's a lot voice wise that I would do with Blade that I haven't seen quite yet that I think would walk alongside with what folks have already done and I think stand amongst its own. And Lord willing, one day maybe I'll get that opportunity.
Okay, I
I
love
talked to
that.
Mahershala. I try to get Mahershala to put in a good word for me. We'll see.
That man, oh, that would be phenomenal. I'm still waiting for like a trailer, a press release, something. Because like there was that rumor of the movie being like done, and I'm like, nah, there's no way. There's no way
I
they would
don't,
pass that up.
I don't think it's done. I don't think it's done. That's just
Uh,
the thing. I won't say anything I know. I don't think it's done.
Okay. I appreciate that because like it was hard to watch someone that doesn't look like you speak on a character that looks like you. And like it's one of those little nuggets that I really appreciate to this day that Mark Guggenheim was just like, I'm gonna make Blade a mixed baby and I'm gonna walk out the room. And he did that. It's made me happy all these years because it's like you were there for me when I needed you.
Yes. Guggenheim is a great man, but yes.
Most definitely. So, in terms of Star Wars, you seem to have more knowledge than like anybody when it comes to things. You pull it out your hat, you do what you want. No, because
I get
like
a
you.
story. They have so many Star Wars experts. Like they put me in a
Okay.
room, they say, "Hey, would you like this character?" I always say yes, regardless who IG-88, whoever it is. I say yes. And then I sort of look to what the core of the character is. You know,
Mm,
IG-88 is a great example. It's one of my favorite Star Wars characters. Where books, the stories that I've written,
yeah.
um, where we were trying to say whether or not like droids had sentient like souls. Did they have souls? Did they have something
Mm,
beyond just a machine? And being able to write that story was so much fun because it was a standalone story. I knew I only had one, but they have so many experts between Lucasfilm and Marvel. Any question that you have, they have an answer like right at their fingertips. So it makes me look
mm,
like I know everything. I don't
okay.
know everything. I know the first trilogy, but I don't. After that, when you get to all the other and all of its canon, the books, the everything
Yo.
is that. So whenever they give me an assignment, I do kind of a deep dive in any holes that are there. I ask questions and then I try to put it together and make it feel like I know everything, but I don't know everything.
Mhm. Okay, because like yeah, because like you've touched characters like Lando, and now you're getting Boba, and it's like I'm sitting here wondering, are you gonna do like a one for one of the Book of Boba Fett TV show, or are you gonna give extra little nuggets that weren't able to be done in the TV show? Because I've said the longest time, like if I could just take a baseball bat to Din Djarin and get him the heck out that show, that way I could just enjoy Boba. It would be so much better. Like I just need a Boba focused show. And I feel like you're gonna give me that.
I'm going to give you what they let me give you.
Oh
That's not my
man.
world. It's not my world. I do what they tell me, you know. I do what they tell me. They give me the assignment. I do the best I can. Like Mandalorian was exactly the TV show. It was
Mm,
exactly the TV show. I did what they allowed, and that was it. I tried to put voiceover in. I tried to put some narration. I tried to do everything. Nope, 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 nope. The problem is when you any one thing you change affects the other things.
mm,
So if you put something in there and it's not part of the Star Wars universe, you could mess up some stuff. So you have to
mm.
play it close to the vest. You can't
Okay.
really take liberty unless they let you.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that makes sense because it's like you would think you'd want to give a little bit of extra to those loyal fans who like spend the money for the comic books because
Yeah.
like just having a play by play of the thing you've already done feels like no, I don't want to say a waste of money, but it almost feels like you're just getting a net like a last time on Power Rangers type thing where it's like the same beat you've already had and it's not like more if that makes sense.
It
So
does. It does.
yeah, so it's a little interesting in that regard. In terms of the future of what you're working on. Like, people have been asking me because I'm the one hyping up Philadelphia as much as possible. But it's like, where do you where is it? Where is the remnants of issue 36? Is it coming? Do you know what you can give people on the record? Like, can you tease it?
I can
Something.
say I can say you're gonna get a 36. You're gonna get
Oh,
more than a 36. You're going to get rewarded for your patience. Jason and I weren't lying to you. Life just kind of gets in the way sometimes where you're not able to do everything that you'd like to be able to do in the time period that you'd like to be able to do it. But you're going to get it. You're going to get 36. You're going to get something. I know somebody saying, yeah, 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 right. You said that a year ago. And you're going to get it, Lord willing. We've talked to Image, and you may get it this year. I'll put this one on Jason because he's very busy too.
mm,
But we're doing everything we can with our due diligence to get it in, get it done.
okay. I
I miss
appreciate
Philadelphia. I
that.
miss the world. I miss Seesaw. I miss the Sangsters. I miss John Adams. I miss everybody.
Okay. Yeah, because like it's been lingering. People have asked me in my Discord, so like I appreciate that because it's something that I
Yes.
want to make sure people know.
Well,
Like, there's
hopefully they'll
hope.
show out. I hope they show out when it comes, and they go out and get it.
So there are two like anomalies from those last few issues I've wanted to talk to you about, and it's how on God's green earth did Al Simmons and Savage Dragon end up in this universe?
We we wanted to do a volume that felt like a comic book because a lot of Philadelphia is so heavy and so emotional and philosophical and religion and blah 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 blah, life, death, killing. We wanted to do something that felt fun, and so Spawn fighting Seesaw and all of that, and Anansi coming in with his jokes and all of the stuff. We just wanted to have fun, just to change the pace of everything. And because Jason has such great relationships with the great Todd McFarlane and Eric Larson and all of those people, getting permission wasn't that hard. And I had the rights to Blackula, so we just made it work.
Okay. I was just really curious because I'm like, especially with Spawn, it raised a question that has been in my head. I even posted this on Twitter recently, and I would love your thoughts on this. To my knowledge, I would have to like do a little bit of digging on this, but there have only been two black writers that have ever had the opportunity to even touch Spawn, not even write the mainline series, but to touch Spawn. That would be you and Joseph Illidge with Bloodletter. And I'm sitting here wondering your thoughts on the fact that while yes, it is phenomenal that Spawn now is the longest running black superhero in comic history. What is your what are your thoughts on the fact that like his blackness isn't really ever a focal point of the narrative? He's just a dude who happens to be black.
hmm Um, I think it would be great to be able to go back in time and deal with some of that stuff. Like if you had a pre-spawn, like, who was he before all of this befell him? It would be fantastic. And my thought is perhaps we will get that. That said, I mean, I think a lot of Spawn seems to take place in a place where culture, race, life doesn't seem to matter quite as much when he's fighting Sam and Twitch and he's in hell and against the Violator and all of these other things.
Right.
You would almost have to make a space for it in order. It would have to be a book that's specifically about that in a setting where that's the topic. But he lives in such a fantastical place. I don't know where you don't. I don't. I'll say for me, I don't like when it's forced. I like when it becomes
Mm,
part of the story. Like it's part of it matters to the story. Like even when you were talking about this, James Sangster and the way he talks to his son. That's a black father
mm,
talking to a black son. Um,
right.
when he's talking to people in the city of Philadelphia, just how people talk on the street, that type of
Mm,
thing. It warrants that sense of culture because, again, I look at culture more than I look at race. When you're in that
mm,
setting, that's where to me it's pronounced because I look at more of how people do things more so than just how they look. And
mm,
if you come from, it's like hip hop. New York sounds different than LA, sounds different than Miami, sounds different than the Deep
mm.
South. So what would that mean to Al? I don't know where he's from. But how would that present itself? How would that be, and where would the story take place in order for that to happen? If he's in Louisiana and he's battling Swamp Thing, and you see that, and he's has the opportunity to walk amongst people as Al Simmons, yeah, I want to see that. I want to see that type of characterization. But like I said, the majority of what I see is him fighting angels and gods and
Mm,
all of those things. And unless you make him like Anansi was in American Gods, where he's primarily, from the speaking about his people, his worshipers, and he's
mm,
speaking specifically black. Um, that's when I think it's most warranted. But I wouldn't give up hope. I mean, I think the beautiful thing about a character like Spawn, he's been around for a long time, and it
mm.
seems like Todd is open to a lot of different ideas. You got a country and western Spawn, you got a fast Spawn, slow Spawn, you got all the different Spawns, little Spawn, big Spawn. You never know. You may get a blacker Spawn. You may get the Spawn that you want, in time.
I would love that because like my brainchild, and I pitched this to Ray Height a while back. I don't know if you saw this on Threads, where it's like you writing Ray on art is just like
I would
we're
love
gonna
to.
make Spawn the blackest he can be, and actually like have that because like even when like in the movie like you see Michael Jai White trying to give you authentic black in a
Yeah.
way, but then it's like
Yeah.
when you read Spawn, there's that disconnect where it's like he happens to be black, but like Todd has even talked about in interviews where like loyal white fans are like will be like, I love your character, everything about this, and then he'll go, he's black, right? And then they'll lose interest. So it's this
Right.
idea where it's like he just happens to be black.
Yeah. But I think a lot of that, when you look at the history of comics characters in the big two, and where they come from. I remember talking to Neil Adams about John Stewart, and I think his name was Lincoln Jefferson or Jefferson Lincoln at one time before it was John Stewart. And when he was fighting Hal Jordan, he sounded very black. He sounded like a Black Panther, and a lot of those characters were like over the top because they were kind of mirroring black exploitation movies at the time. So I think it's more of who the writer is, what story are they trying to tell, what's the specificity in the story you're trying to tell, and what you're trying to accomplish. There are two extremes if it's on the spectrum. There's ignoring it 1,000%, what he looks like and what world he comes from. And then I think sometimes putting it in there so heavy that there's no story, that, it's almost like you're so focused on this one idea that you don't see the story. Because I like when the two, again, going back to our earlier conversation about Crownsville and Philadelphia, when you can make the two move together like a natural, like you're moving with the tide.
Mm,
That to me is the biggest honor that you can give a character, because you're acknowledging that this character is real, that this you're giving them fully realized thing. You're not just pandering to one idea of what it means to be a person of color.
that's beautiful. Okay. So at the end of every episode, we like have a closing thought, and it's like you have so many projects you're working on, you have so many things that you're doing. What do you want to leave people with now that you have a nomination, another nomination? You have like so many different things going on, and with the current climate the way it is, where it feels like black representation is hard to find in comic books unless you're like digging, like you have to grab a shovel and dig half the time. So, what do you want to leave people with for the future of black writers and creators in comic books?
I think it's a great time. I mean, when I see what Stephanie Williams is doing, when I see what so many people um, are doing out there, yeah, representation is tough. But when you think about when I was growing up, when you may have one or two folks in the game, Dennis Cowan is still around. You've got people old, young, in the middle, doing really, really great work. It's a struggle. I'm not going to act like it's not a struggle. It is. Mark Bernardin with his Star Wars stuff. Like, there's a lot of great folks out there doing stuff. And I think that with any achieving anything comes with consistency over time. It's not going to be quick. I don't think any of this was designed with us in mind to be able to say we were even going to be in the game at all, and to be able to have however many nominations as it was and is, however many folks working right now. Um, folks like yourself talking about the industry and keeping it alive. I think that's what I look at you guys like is like if we lived in the same neighborhood, we would like trade books together and talk and argue. Like you give voice to it on social media. You keep it alive. You keep the tendrils of communication going. And none of that stuff was there when I was coming up. I was relegated to my neighborhood. And the fact that we can have this conversation right now and folks may hear it, folks may see it, I think it's a beautiful thing. I look at it more optimistically than I do. I look at more of what's there than what's not there.
Right.
You know, because we
Okay.
do have stuff there. Like we're talking about an actual book that I did that got an Eisner nomination, and so many other people. Like when I go to a con, I'm not the only one of my kind there. You know,
Mm,
it would be great if I was doing more. I would love to do more mainstream stuff. I would love to be able to have Philadelphia go to like Spawn, go to book
mm,
350 and all of that kind of stuff, and it'd be a big deal. I would love to be able to do that. But I don't know if the machine is fashioned in that way. When you talk
mm,
about distribution and you talk about getting it in people's hands, and can they afford 20 books every Wednesday, and you know, can they buy all of the stuff, and
mm,
how is it presented in comic shops, and what's the relationship between us and comic shops, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I
mm.
do see a lot of positives where at one time there were nothing but negatives, or a lot more negatives.
Right. Okay. That was beautiful. But no, thank you for this. I feel like it's gonna be an amazing opportunity for people to hear what you have to say. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, likewise, man, you always give me love, and I'm like, you know, who is this brother always making me feel good about myself? You know, when you're sitting there by yourself in a room writing a book, you're like, why am I doing this? I ain't gonna make no money. I'm just sitting here writing and writing. I could be outside doing anything, but here I am. And then when I see people read it and it's received relatively well, I go, okay, this is why you do it, to connect with folks and tell stories.